Hi, everyone. Welcome to part two of this LIUniverse conversation. If you haven't seen part one yet or heard part one yet, find it. It should be linked in the show notes for you to watch. So let's jump right back in.
All right. Speaking of those sorts of things, I think we've got another question that's related to some astrophysical sources of doom.
Bring it on.
Yeah, so this one's from Daniela, who's asking, if a black hole hits the sun, will Earth be destroyed?
Ooh,
Or
great question. Of course, that has shades of meaning depending on how massive the black hole that hits the sun is, right?
Because most black holes that we have to know about in space are bigger than the sun in terms of mass. So it'd really be like us hitting them as opposed to them hitting us.
Right. Well, if it's only, right, a typical stellar black hole that's created by the collapse of a big stellar core and things like that.
In the supernova,
Okay. Yeah. It will already, just by itself existing, be 2 or 3 times more massive than the sun, which would make it, almost 1,000,000 times more massive than the Earth, which means that even though it would only be a few miles across, it would have much more pull on Earth gravitationally than the sun does now. So if it were to hit the sun, it would disrupt Earth's orbit immediately. We would be thrown in some sort of trajectory, either far away from the Earth or toward the sun. And so it wouldn't be immediate destruction, but it would lead absolutely to Earth's destruction.
We'd either get burned to a crisp or we would freeze out in the dark part of space.
That's right. So that's not cool.
pretty immediate, right? Like it's like it hits and we're done.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. The way that things go when things collide out in space, which we don't think of that often, but is actually true, they almost never are going head on, right? So the center of the sun does not hit the center of the black hole very often. Instead, what happens is things start to swirl. They kind of come toward each other and do this dance as they get closer and closer and closer and spiral inward.
Yeah.
And then boom. Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you are just listening right now, I'm using my fingers. Go to the YouTube and you can see what I'm doing.
A little swirl with the angular
swirly thing with my fingers as they come closer and closer and closer.
Like a little drain.
Like a drain thing. And
like
so
like the mice, right?
Yes. NGC 4676A and B. Thank you, Hannah. Boy, you've learned your astronomy well. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I had a good teacher.
Oh, that's nice.
You're so sweet. That mice thing is swirling on timescales of hundreds of millions of years, right? But the swirly thing for a black hole and a star like the sun would be on the timescale of weeks or months, right? Furthermore, long before the actual collision happened and things started getting really swirly, material from the sun will start falling toward that star because the sun is not a solid object, right? It doesn't have that sort of hard boundary like a black hole does, where once you get in, you can never come out. Instead, it's made up of gravitationally held together plasma. And so some of that plasma starts streaming toward the black hole. So long before the actual collision happens, you're going to start seeing some pretty amazing fireworks as streams of star stuff from the sun swirl into that black hole. It would be pyrotechnically awesome, but not good for those of us here on Earth.
This is what they call cataclysmic variables, that kind of stuff.
It's
X-ray binaries.
It's part of a whole area of study of research, yes, that not specifically a cataclysmic variable, but that whole binary star thing that happens. Yes, X-ray binaries, right? The material will start emitting X-rays, gamma rays, a lot more radio waves.
We don't want to be near that, but we'd be able to see it coming a while off.
But we would be sad that it's going on. It's like, oh, well, guys, it was fun. The good news is the closest known stellar-sized or stellar mass-ish black hole, right, is thousands of light years away. So we're okay. It will take way, way longer for it to get here than a chance for our, say, next massive volcano blowing up in Italy or in Greece.
And the nearby black holes aren't like headed right for us. They're going all whatever direction they want.
That's right. So we're really in good shape. Yeah, so we're good with that. But thank you for asking, Amit. That was a great question.
That was a good question.
Hannah, tell us about what happens when civilizations fall. Like, let's say we have this sort of situation where we know that our world is going down. I mean, what is going to happen to us actually? Like, let's say, well, let's make it a little bit more palatable. Let's say civilization.
Too.
Yeah, let's say civilization is not actually going to be like wiped out. Let's say not every human being is going to go down, but like all the major sort of social structures, like you were describing with the Bronze Age collapse, are going to fall apart, right? So governments, villages and towns, countries. I mean, what happens when civilization falls?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest thing to talk about here is the fall of Rome, right?
I think about Rome all the time. Yeah.
The Roman Empire is my Roman Empire.
That's great. We love it.
Gosh, yeah, the Roman Empire. Well, I think maybe a way to answer this question would be to talk about the different times when Rome is supposed to have fallen.
Oh, okay.
The fall of Rome happened a lot of times and also no times.
Interesting.
Oh.
So Rome has never fallen?
Well, I don't know. Rome's still there.
There's a city of Rome.
True.
You could go
That's
to
true.
it.
Yes.
It's the capital of a medium-sized country.
Yeah, it's like a pretty decently sized country, pretty internationally powerful city.
Yeah.
And also there's many people who claim to be the continuation of the Roman Empire today.
True.
Whoa.
Every country in Europe was like, we're the real Rome.
Yeah. They're like, it's our, we took it over because y'all fell down, so we picked it back up.
And then America's like, well, we have a republic and we have a bunch of marble columns, so like we're basically
do
Rome.
Yourself a favor and go and look up the statue of George Washington as a Roman emperor. We wanted to be Rome too. We think we're Rome. Go to Washington D.C. All of our monuments are Roman.
It's true,
except for the one that's Egyptian.
Well, which
the
was
obelisk
stolen by the Romans.
That's fair. That's fair. They did steal a lot of those.
There's still in Rome today.
We're referring to the Washington Monument, everybody.
Yeah.
But no. So I mean, the first fall of Rome potentially is 44 BCE, right? The assassination of Julius Caesar.
True.
What used to be a republic becomes an empire.
Wow.
Slowly but surely, over about 20 years. And I would say a lot of people thought that was the end of the Rome that they knew and loved, right?
Interesting.
The collapse of government systems. People were very upset about it, mostly senators.
That makes sense.
Which makes
they kind of had a vested interest in having a republic.
They lost.
I think our senators would be sad too if we became an empire, right?
Well, an empire without a functioning senate.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, I would hope so. Then you get, the 476 classic, Gibbon, fall of Rome, the Germans invade, and that's it, right?
Wait, Gibbons caused the fall of Rome?
No,
orangutans and stuff?
The monkeys, they showed up. They were...
Yeah, they're apes. They're lesser apes, technically. Yeah,
The lesser apocalypse? Oh! No, seriously, what's this Gibbon thing?
He's an author.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, he wrote the famous book. I think it's called like The Fall of Rome.
I've heard of this. Yeah.
Oh yes, that I understand now. That Gibbon book was quoted as the inspiration for Isaac Asimov's Foundation series.
Yeah. The history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire.
There it is. Yeah, Edward Gibbon.
Oh, okay.
Published
so this
in
is
1776. Interestingly enough.
What?
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Couple 100 years old.
Yeah.
Gosh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, first volume published in 1776, last one in 1789.
Wow, that's kind of fun. It's exactly 1,300 years after the date that he claimed the fall occurred.
Oh, maybe not a coincidence.
Maybe not a coincidence. It's good marketing.
Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, this year when the Senate supposedly sent the symbols of Rome to the east, right, to Byzantium.
Right.
Okay.
Inside, good luck.
Right.
Wow.
But now recently, a lot of scholars are saying like that's not really how civilization ends. Like it's not just like boom, you're done. Yeah,
like imagine if like we evacuated the Constitution to Denver because we were getting invaded by like people from
the sea people.
The East. The sea people were invading, and we're like, okay, Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, that all goes to Denver now. Like we wouldn't stop being America. We'd just be America in Denver instead of Washington.
Yeah. A lot of good fiction about that, in fact. Some good Handmaid's Tale, Canticle Leibowitz, right?
We got Man in the High Castle. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Man in the High Castle. World War Z, right?
World War Z is a good one. I love World
Denver
War Z.
survives.
Yeah. World War Z, they create a redoubt west of the Rockies to defend against the zombie hordes. Minor spoilers.
Man, that's it. I don't have to read the book anymore.
It's an old book, but I love it. It's great.
Okay. Well, speaking of, I think this biological destruction theme is a good apocalyptic thing to stay. Do we have a question along those lines from the audience?
Yeah, we got this question from Michael about biological creatures that could destroy us. Not exactly zombies.
Okay.
Michael says, I heard that scientists brought back a dire wolf. Could they bring back dinosaurs or animals that would destroy us all?
Very Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah, we love it.
Okay,
so
right.
yeah, the sad news I have to report is that the dire wolves are not actually dire wolves. They are gray wolves that have been genetically engineered to kind of look like dire wolves.
What?
Which is not the same thing as a dire wolf. Still pretty cool, but definitely not the same thing.
Okay, hold on. Please explain this to me. I know that, for example, like we can make tomatoes look blue or something, using genetic engineering.
Yeah.
Did basically take a wolf or a dog and made it look like a dire wolf? Is that all they did?
Yeah, so a dire wolf is a species of canid family, so dog family animal that actually diverged from the wolves that we know today and jackals and foxes and dogs before all those groups diverged from each other. So jackals and foxes and dogs are more closely related to each other than any of them is to the dire wolf. So picking a gray wolf was kind of arbitrary. It's just the one that was most shaped like a dire wolf and lived in the same place as a dire wolf in North America. Has the word wolf in it, but that is true. So, but they could have picked foxes. They could have picked domesticated dogs. They got lots of options.
Dire chihuahuas just doesn't
dire
sound
chihuahuas,
the same.
yeah. So dire wolves, they're an extinct predator that was found in North America. The La Brea tar pits in California that have a bunch of fossils. They got loads of dire wolf fossils. One of the potential reasons people, I have to double check this maybe, but one of the reasons people think they have a lot of dire wolf fossils, the dire wolves were dumber than the gray wolves and fell into the pits more.
Actually, they fell in. No.
So I don't know if that's 100% true, but that's a little bit of the effort that people are making.
So where did the scientists get this dire wolf DNA?
They took one of those fossils and they sequenced the DNA. They got 80% or 85% of a good whole genome, which is pretty impressive. I'm not saying it's not an impressive scientific achievement. But it's not the same thing as a full dire wolf. So they took little bits and pieces of that genome and put them into the gray wolf genome in places where it would be to change their coat color to make them look white instead of gray, or to make them a little bit bigger, or change their teeth maybe. I don't know exactly all the changes they made. They probably keep that as a trade secret or whatever.
I see.
But yeah, so they just took wolves and changed a little bit. Interestingly, talking about dinosaurs, there's a similar project to do this with chickens to make them look like dinosaurs.
Oh, wow.
Someone called it the Chickenosaurus Project or something.
Well, chickens already look like dinosaurs?
Chickens do, because dinosaurs are fat. Yeah, birds are just a kind of dinosaur. Dinosaurs had feathers, all those sorts of things. But they want to make them to look like fossils of dinosaurs do. So, give chickens teeth and bigger wings and, longer tail.
Yikes.
I don't think a Chickenosaurus would be that big of a threat to us because it's still just a modified chicken.
But chickens could kill us all. You could imagine one of those comics, right, where maybe The Far Side by Gary Larson a long time ago, where the dogs are rising up in the alien spacecraft because it turns out the dogs actually are more advanced technologically than we are. So now we have chickens coming in
the same thing.
The chicken apocalypse. The chickpocalypse.
Feathers McGraw, famously from Wallace and Gromit.
That's right.
He's gonna get you. Not technically a chicken, which I recently realized he was not actually a chicken. He's just a penguin who disguises himself as a chicken. But it worked on me. But yeah, he's out to get you for sure.
Wow. And never mind Gromit's Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
So we could generate, I mean, the odds of generating a creature that will cause our destruction actually is interesting, right? I mean, Michael Crichton, when he wrote Jurassic Park decades ago, right, led to this sort of multi-billion-dollar movie franchise, of course.
Yeah.
But if they got 80% of the dire wolf's genetics out of tar pits, can they actually like do what Michael Crichton claimed in
dinosaurs?
Jurassic
Their
Park?
dinosaurs are another 1,000 times older than the dire wolves, so their DNA is long gone from the fossils we have. But it's still like there's still descendants of dinosaurs, like the chickens around. We can sort of mess with those. I would argue that if we're going to create a creature that's going to destroy us all, there's two things that it'll be, and it won't be a dinosaur. It'll either be a germ or it'll be an AI.
Yeah.
AI. Oh my gosh, do we have time to talk about all that? Germ, definitely. Look, Michael Crichton, author of Jurassic Park, also wrote a very famous book called The Andromeda Strain.
Right. Yeah.
Okay? And that was the idea that a microbe lands on the Earth and causes actual like death and destruction of human beings. It caused in the original. I think it's okay. I can spoil a book that's like older than I am.
I spoiled World War Z.
Okay. All right. Anyway, what happens is that anyone who breathes this germ in, their blood clots solid in 3 seconds.
Oh, dang.
I mean, it was just like incredible, immediate death kind of thing.
Oh,
and
man.
So what do you do to do that? You know, do you try to contain the germ by like cordoning it off and not letting anybody come in, or do you try to blast it like with a bomb, like a nuke, and destroy all of the germs and stuff like that with a huge incineration, or or what, right? And that was a really neat way of him trying to grapple with that problem from a biological wildfire type epidemic point of view, but not from an astronomical point of view, right? We haven't found any germs coming down from space. Not yet. We've looked and looked and looked, and they're just not there. And the calculations seem to show that even if you were able to blast something like from the moon or Mars, by the time it got to Earth, the rigors of space would destroy anything that's DNA based before it got here. But,
that's good. Historically, some of the most deadly disasters in human history have been plagues.
Yeah, especially if it's coming from other places.
Oh my God!
Like the Americas.
Exactly right. And they come from other places, and we don't have the immune system.
That's right.
Handle it. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, in our own recent history, COVID-19 felt pretty much like the end of the world in some ways. And, and I'm really grateful that, we had the scientific knowledge and the people who were scientifically capable to create that vaccine and also to create the protocols of quarantine and safety to protect us all from really, really dangerous stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about averting disaster, like we could blow up a meteor and we can make a vaccine, and that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. We love it.
But are we at risk, right, of creating a germ like that? Is there anything that we're close to right now that you guys know of that might actually do this?
I know that people talk about biological weapons research. A lot of that's classified, military stuff. But because of things like CRISPR becoming so much more accessible to the public, I think people are worried that what used to be the domain of the U.S. and the Soviet Union in the Cold War might become the domain of some crazy guy in his backyard with a DNA kit.
Wow.
And so that's something that people want to be aware of and try and prevent, not just be worried about it.
Okay.
Don't be that crazy guy in the backyard with your DNA kit.
Please don't.
Okay. I'll just be the guy with the asteroid hitting in the backyard, or the little teeny weeny meteorite in the backyard.
Yeah, that would be great.
Does that sound okay? All right. We can't not talk about the Black Plague, the Black Death, if we're talking about like civilization threatening epidemics, right, Hannah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what, when, where, why Black Death?
Yeah.
Black
Discuss.
Death.
We got to be
Europe. Bubonic plague, 1300s, 25 to 50 million people.
Whoa.
Yeah,
that's
pretty
a lot.
bad.
Also Central Asia too, right?
Some estimates are that it was like up to 60% of Europe died of this bubonic plague. Yeah, it's completely bonkers.
Huge.
And then, we think maybe that the plague came from Asia, right? And so the Europeans didn't have the resources or the immune systems to resist it. And that, but actually an even more destructive plague is the plague of Justinian, which was about 1,000 years before that.
Really?
I
Yeah.
think people thought it might have been the same germ, right?
Yeah, they thought maybe it was the same germ, and this time maybe came from Egypt. We're not super clear. The records aren't great, but the estimates are up to 100 million people were killed, and that was a time when the European population was, I don't know, a little bit bigger actually. So it's just a lot. It's pretty ridiculous. Every several generations we get these really large plagues. You can think about the Spanish flu, the plague of Justinian, the Antonine plague. Yeah,
they even have that same Yersinia pestis, the bubonic plague germ. There was what they call the third plague pandemic in the late 1800s, early 1900s in like India and China and like South America, and and in these places that didn't have access to the same healthcare systems that were just being rolled out in places like the U.S. and Europe. It was just as devastating as those other previous historical plagues.
Moly.
And
they call the plague of Justinian the first one, right?
For plague of Justinian first, Black Plague the second, and then this one the third. Is what they number that.
And that also, like the time period when that happened in Europe, like the roughly 541 kind of deal, AD, was also a time when there had been a volcanic winter and a little ice age, and so these like co-terminal disasters, like famine and disrupted trade routes and like all these things. Was the end in a lot of people's minds, right?
If I had learned about all of this when I was in high school, maybe I'd be a historian today, because this is really cool. All right.
Yeah, people say that about your astro stuff too. There's so much out to learn, and schools do an okay job of it, and teachers are trying their best, and I really appreciate that. But also, there's even more than you can possibly fit into one school education.
Amazing.
Oh yeah, not enough in the world.
Yeah, and we really actually can't fit any more into this episode. We have gone way long. We have to hope that we can somehow keep the attention of all of our audience members. So if you're still with us, thank you. We really appreciate that. But there's still so much more to talk about. Hannah, will you come back again, please? I know that, it's hard for you to say no because, I
related
asked,
or something.
But we have so much. It's such a pleasure to chat with you. Hannah Liu, historian, scientifically literate, awesome meister. Thank you very much for being our guest today. How can we find the stuff that you're doing now? Any recent projects that we should be aware of? We can find you on social media, all that?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'll come back anytime. I'm writing a book. I think I mentioned before. Hopefully out by the end of the year.
Excellent.
Mixed. It's the self-guided journal for multiracial youth.
Wow.
And head to my website and get a pre-order at the mixedidentityyinitiative.org. So,
I love that.
It's cheaper if you pre-order on the website. So do that.
All right.
Excellent. Okay. Can't wait. And the next time you show up, if it's already in print, you got to make sure to wave it in front of the camera on our YouTube.
Okay, deal.
Okay. All right.
Great.
Hannah Liu, thank you so much for being with us on this episode of Chuck GPT, the Apocalypse Edition.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
And as always, our co-host, Alan Liu, thank you for everything you do to make this episode and this whole show awesome.
You're welcome. Glad to be here. Glad to be doing that. Glad for all the other people involved as well.
Yeah, wonderful. And for all of you in the audience, thank you for being with us today. If you've liked what you've seen and heard today, please support us on Patreon. And as always, thank you for being a part of the LIUniverse.